Welcome to Two Gals in a Glass Half Full. We are Dr. Jess and Dr. Bobbie, two physical therapists just trying to live healthy most of the time and doing our best to see our personal glasses as half full. Some days that is much harder than others. Sometimes we interview others more knowledgeable than us on different topics to teach us about things we do not know, and sometimes you are just stuck with Dr. Jess and I sharing our knowledge and information. So make sure you hit subscribe below to stay up to date on all of the Two Gals happenings. So as we get going into the new year, I think the biggest thing on everyone's mind is goals or New Year resolutions or things. And a lot of times they get forgotten about after the first week. So that is going to be our topic this month, is how we can kind of work on goals, set goals, and kind of carry them through the year. But first, Dr. Jess, what do you have in your glass today?
So today I am working on finishing my water bottle, and I'm challenging myself to finish this before I can have another cup of tea, because I've been really liking like a cup of warm tea in the afternoons. But I'm like, you have to finish this until you get your tea. So that's my reward for finishing my water. So Dr. Bobbie, what's in your glass?
I have just plain old water. I am actually proud of myself. I've been doing a really good job at like drinking lots of water, like probably 2 or 3 of these a day, which is like pretty good for me.
Right. Yep. That's why I try and like refill this multiple times, like finish one by lunch, then one by the time I leave, and then one before I go to bed. I don't always get it done, but it is, otherwise you can have one of those really big ones and you just have to finish the whole thing. But I find that it's like a little bit cumbersome. And so I'm more likely to like, because this I can move around with me easier. So yeah.
Well, and sometimes I feel like more accomplished when I finished it. Whereas like the big one, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got how much left to go. Whereas this is like, okay, I already got one in the books. Like,
right. Yeah. Like, boom, goal met. Yeah.
I'm a checklist girl. Like, check it. You know how sometimes you write down the to-do list after you've already done the stuff just so you can
check it off. Yeah, no, I was just talking to somebody about that last week of like adding that, like, because you're like, I'm going to give myself credit for this. Like, because I already got it. I'm giving myself that credit.
Totally agree.
So yes, this is starting off our goal setting episode. And so we are officially into 2023, which is super exciting. I mean, I don't know exactly how that happened so quickly. Like all of a sudden, like 2022 is gone. And we are now in the first day of 2023. So why not start off with like, boom, let's talk about big ideas with goal setting. And as the month goes on with our episodes, we'll get more specific with like different areas. But the episode today is meant to be a bit more of a big picture episode. And so Dr. Bobbie has a strategy and tool that she uses, and it's really helped her a lot. And so we're going to share that with you in this episode and see if it could be beneficial to somebody else to learn more about this tool.
So this is my second year doing this planner, and it's a specific planner, but you don't need the specific planner. It's just the ideas. And this planner gave me these ideas. And so it starts the year by like you just sitting down with a glass of milk, a glass of wine, a glass of coffee, whatever you want. I mean, just thinking of, and they asked you to make 50 goals in all areas of your life. So you can see this is the planner that I have, and we'll put this down in the description. So that way, if you want to take a look at it in person, online, you can. But it first starts with like writing out 50 goals. And what it says to you is like, if there was no limit to what you could do, be, buy, or become, what would you do in the next 25 to 50 years? And if you could not fail, what would you do? What would you try? And I just like that idea, because sometimes when we dream and when we set these goals, we try to be realistic with it. Oh, well, I don't know if that will happen, or I don't have time, I don't have money, I don't have this. So this is more putting all of that aside and just like writing out, like, what do you want to accomplish in your lifetime?
And yeah. And I think like Dr. Bobbie and I, like we kind of challenged ourselves to do this, just like when we get together, and it'll be like, hey, let's just like one night while we're together, if like we're attending the same continuing education course or something like that, like we just kind of like spitfire of like, what do we want? What do we want in 25 years for our lives, or 5 years, or whatever it might be, just to like have that like that sounding board that's not going to judge you for like what you say, because it might be something that you're like, it might seem silly or something like that, just to have that safe audience. So you can do this in person with somebody as well, like, or if you don't, like, you can write it down. But it's like, it's so good to like really let yourself expand your mind and think like, if nothing was in the way, what would I do? And it doesn't mean like, boom, you're going to do that tomorrow, but like, it might shed some light on like what your true happiness might be.
Mhm. And then, as you set those goals, it talks about like 7, 8 different categories to look at. So it's looking at your spiritual, it's looking at your health and your personal growth, which I think are all important, but also it looks at like family and then relationships outside of family. It's looking at finances and then your business or career. And the last one is one I often think we forget about, is like fun and recreational. Like, those random, I want to do trips. Or for example, one of my number 32 was go snow tubing. I'd never gone snow tubing. And so this past year I got to go snow tubing. So it doesn't have to be anything. It can be big goals,
Mhm.
like I had own a pay it off house. That's a big goal. That's not going to happen in the next few years. But then it can also be goals that it's like just something you've never done that you want to do, or you always say you want to do, but you never make time for.
Mhm. I think when you like actually say it out loud or write it down, somehow it makes it become a little bit more real and it doesn't stay there in the background. And so it's just good. It's good to like recognize this. So I mean, again, like not because it's gonna happen tomorrow, but it won't ever happen unless you put it out there. So
Yeah. And I think an important thing to know is not everyone's all going to support your goals either. They're not going to understand them. They're not going to understand why you want to do something or why is that important to you. And it's okay. It's important to you, and it should be a goal for you. We are not on this world created the same, and I think it would be a really boring world if we all had the same goals with all same aspirations. Like that's what makes us human. That's what makes us different.
yeah. And that's why I think like choosing that safe audience, whether you're just sharing it with yourself in a journal or with an audience that is safe to you, then
Mm-hmm.
that's how it'll be helpful. I had
Yes.
many people think it was very silly that I would start my own clinic. Like, why would you do that? Why that just like, why wouldn't you just work for somebody else and you don't have all that extra work and you can just show up and leave? And why would you do that? And it's like, well, I clearly have a why. So let's make the assumption that there's a
Mhm.
why behind that. And I'll give you the long answer if you're interested. I'm not going to spend the time if you're not interested. That's all, And they just look at you at the
Yeah.
answer of like, I'm like, I mean, real answer. Like, do you actually want the answer or did you want to judge me? I mean, they're like, oh, I'm like, oh, anyway, moving on. Like,
I found
uh,
the same when I started like paying off debt and like wanting to get out of debt and living a life on nothing, and got rid of all my credit cards, got rid of everything, and people just thought I was crazy. And
mhm,
there were people that thought I was crazy but still supported me, not even understanding, but they knew it was my goal, and so they were going to support me. And then there was people that thought I was crazy and
mhm,
tried to convince me as to why it wasn't a good idea.
mhm.
So you're always going to run into all of that. I just
Yeah.
don't let it stop you from chasing your dreams and goals.
For sure. Yeah. Like only you know what's going to make you fulfilled and happy. And having somebody else question that, if it's not in a meaningful way or a way that's meant for your own benefit, then if it's just meant based on judgment, then like don't let that sway you. So that's not helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say sometimes what I like, so sometimes before you even, so the page, so this is your 50 goals and kind of this is the outline of, I didn't write all of these goals under here because I kind of knew them, but that's the idea, was to write that, make sure you had goals for every aspect of your life. But
Mhm.
the page before that, which I also think is important, and I think we tend to, when we think about goals, it's like these are just questions of like, what do you want to achieve in your lifetime? How do you want to grow? What do you want to contribute to this world? Why are you here? Or who am I? Just those simple things of like that sometimes, at least I find hard to describe myself. When I sit down, like it took me a while to sit down and really think through and kind of list out the things that I want, that I feel, that I think I am, that I think I'm deserve, or not necessarily deserve, but that I if I work for, I deserve type thing,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And taking the time. That's the thing, is like
mhm.
allocating time to actually think about it, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's a big deal. I mean, that's the only way it is going to happen. So,
Mhm.
um,
It's like one of my favorite things to do. I do this sitting next to a fire, glass of wine next to a fire, like, and I just kind of take my time, and it's just something that's very enjoyable for me.
mhm. So now that we talked about that big picture, right? This big picture of what are our dreams, all of these different categories, like get it all out there, you know. A big phrase that Bobbie and I use all the time is like throw the spaghetti at the wall and just see what sticks. And we just like chuck it, you know. I mean, knowing it's not all gonna stick, but just like keep at it. And so with that, so that's like throwing the spaghetti at the wall. Like here's all of this out there. We're just gonna just put it all out there.
Mhm.
Now, how do we actually take dreams and push it into implementation? So that's kind of like that's where the real work comes in. And it's real easy to get lost in that. And so I think that's kind of what we'll go into next with this
Mhm.
particular planner, because it actually makes it easy to put those
It
in your
does.
face on a daily and monthly basis.
Yeah. So after you like write that list of, you know, 50 things, like take a look at it and like from that, like what are like the five most important things? Like what are your five big goals, like year-long goals? Like what do you want to accomplish in that year? And kind of like pick out those five because yes, we have 50 goals. Yes, we may be working on parts of all of them as we go along, but like if we try to focus on 50 things, we're not going to really get anywhere. So it's kind of pick the five that are most important to you and like then write those down. So like what does your heart truly desire, but also that not why does it desire it? I mean, not only does it desire it, but then also write why it desires it. And you'll see in this planner, it does the same thing. It has this, and then it writes the why, and then it goes through here. And then there's other things that we'll talk about down. I think picking five so you can focus on something is really important. If you have too much going on, you're going to do a little of everything and not get anything done.
Right. Yeah. And like choosing things that are achievable as well in the short term. So like when in PT, for example, we always set long-term goals and short-term goals when we're implementing a plan of care with a patient. So, and this is like one of my favorite things I do, like on, the first day of like, what do you really want to get back to? Like, what's that like reach? And, like, well, I mean, to brush my hair, or whatever it might be, because
Mhm.
if you don't have the shoulder range of motion, I'm like, no, like past that, that's the easy stuff. Like what's your reach? Like what's your dream? What would be super fulfilling that you haven't been able to do in, this period of time this has been bothering you. And so we get that out, and that's our long-term goal. But we have to have these short-term goals that are achievable to get us to that long-term goal. Because otherwise it's like we're not getting enough wins to realize that we are moving forward. And so it's easy to kind of lose sight of the long-term goal. So like having things
Mhm.
that are achievable keeps the motivation, keeps the interest. And that's kind of part of this planner, is like putting it out there of like, I'm going to write it down, but then I'm also going to write down like, what were my wins? Like celebrate your win. That's
Yes.
awesome. Like point it
Mhm.
out. Like I love progress note day because I'm like, okay, progress note day. And it's like, it's a lot on me because I had to type it all in and there's a lot
I
of
was
work
gonna
with that.
say progress notes. I'm like, oh no, like
Yeah.
just documentation wise.
It's a love-hate relationship for sure. What I love about it is like I have to step back and like take all of these new measurements and I'm like, wow, look, this is better and that is better and that is better. And look, and then that's correlated to this. And I know we're not there yet. However, look at all of these, like
Mhm.
we've gained everywhere. Every single aspect of the plan has improved. It's like, oh wow, I needed to hear that today. Thank you for sharing that, so that's like getting that review of the goal is huge, because you can forget, like, if you implemented something a month ago, well, you kind of forget where you were a month ago unless you really go back and think about it, like, oh, I guess I am doing well with this. I mean, I'm not where I want to be, but I said I would be there in a year. So like I'm a month in and I'm already past where I was.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a win. Like, yeah,
And that's
that's great.
I love this planner. It makes you set goals, like, and it makes you set rewards for those goals. And
Yeah.
as we'll see, it makes you set rewards, which I think is important for the yearly goals. And
Hmm.
obviously, those rewards are, you can make them bigger. You know, you accomplished a huge goal, those are bigger. But then it also has you set monthly and weekly goals. And obviously, weekly goals, if you're working on finance, you can't go spend this amount every time you save this much. But
Right.
it's just the idea of like rewarding yourself for accomplishing the goals. And we're not going to meet every deadline. We're not going to meet every goal,
Yeah.
but we're just going to keep chucking along towards them.
Hmm. But then recognizing the barrier for why you didn't meet it.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't just like beat yourself up that like, oh, I didn't meet it. Like, it's just, this is a bummer. Like, okay, so you didn't meet it. What can you learn about that? Was there a barrier that you
Mm-hmm.
didn't account for? That happens all the time, especially when it's something new. I mean, like we had set these timelines, with the clinic, and oh yeah, by this date, like we're gonna get X, Y, and Z done, and then like all of this other stuff happens, which like takes time and
Life.
energy, right? And then it's like, like we're behind on this goal, we're behind on this deadline that we set for ourselves. It's like, this is so frustrating. I'm like, okay, let's take a step back and reevaluate. Like, what was some of the barriers that got in the way? And were those actual barriers, or did they push us forward in a different way? And we're actually further than we expected to be. So we actually
Mhm.
more than achieved the goal, but in a different way. Oh, okay. I'm okay with that. So we still might have some stuff to clean up and some things to like finish that other goal. But like something else happened and you actually started working on something else while you were working on this thing. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, so it's not that I didn't reach it. It's just something else started and finished while I was
Mhm.
trying to get this other thing done. Okay. Well, then I guess I'm doing better than I thought. Right. Or
Yeah.
it was just like barriers that just happen, illness, sickness, like things that are just dropped on you. I mean, it just is what it is sometimes. I mean, like I was super sick and Dr. Bobbie and I had to like really struggle to like reschedule some stuff. And it was like, well, I literally couldn't get out of bed. So like I couldn't lift my head off the pillow. So I'm like, ew. Yeah,
It's
it
not
pushed us behind.
happening.
Yeah, so nothing I could do about it. It was an unforeseen activity. So a barrier was illness. What did we do about it? Well,
Mhm.
we scrambled to reschedule. So, but that's kind of all of what you just keep recognizing. What was the barrier? Why did I not reach this? And what did I do or what could I have done? And then it's a learning moment. Now you've just learned from that. So you're not gonna, that same barrier isn't gonna like hit you sideways again. I mean, illness does, but like, other
Right.
things that are barriers for sure.
Well, and I think that's one thing. This planner does a great job of it, but in general, even if you don't have the planner and you're making your own goals, is not only like is setting the goals, but then also realizing your fears and your distractions. And I think fears and distractions are two different things. And so with your fears, like write down your fears. And then next to it on a separate line is like write down affirmations of like, no, I can do this. I can be successful. I am worthy, whatever it is to your fear. I think with owning a clinic or opening a clinic, one of my biggest fears is like I wouldn't be able to treat people or no one would come to me or I go from a full schedule in a normal clinic, whereas I go cash based, I worry about like all of a sudden my PT isn't good enough.
Mhm.
And I think those are just normal fears that we have.
Oh, for sure. Fear
Um,
of failure is
because
like huge, huge. It's
right.
easier to not try and avoid failure than it is to like really address that fear of failure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think like naming your fears and then writing affirmations and writing behind it. And that's where, sometimes talking to someone that knows you really well, and that is safe, they can help you. I know Jess and I, the whole time, both of us were working on our clinics, one of us be like, we got it, you got it. And the other one's like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can do it. And it go back and forth. It wasn't one person that was always like, it was back and forth. And just
Right.
when I was just feeling like inadequate, Jess was like, no, we got it. Da, da, da. And then we'd
Right.
switch off. So I think like it's
Yeah.
having that support system around you. to
Mhm.
like encourage you.
Yeah.
Um,
Somebody
but I
else
think
to
fears
like
is
say
different.
affirmations, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Especially if you can't say them yourself.
Yeah.
But I think fears are different than distractions. So I think
Yes.
it's really important that um, with your fears, you need more affirmations, more reassurance. With your distractions, you need an action plan as to how to eliminate that distraction or minimize it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And everybody's distractions are going to be different based on, whether it's you, maybe there's like tendency for like ADD, ADHD. It could be something where distractions might be even just like there's a reason why I sit back here and there's no phone. Just that like if the phone rings, like I'm gonna answer it, right? And it's
Mhm.
just that kind of stuff of like, okay, like just removing other things that could pull you when you're trying to like, I set aside this 30 minutes to do this specific thing. How can I actually block my time to focus on that? And I will tell you, even like notifications of emails, notifications of text
Oh,
messages
yeah.
are huge for pulling your like mindset from what your task is to look over at the notification, decide if it's something that is worthwhile to see in that moment or not, and then come back to it. And even that can be very distracting. And so trying to like find a space of like, I need to get X, Y, and Z done. How can I do that without distraction? Now, you can't have no distractions all day. That's just like
Right.
not realistic.
Right.
So just kind of like, what is that action plan? And, or like if the notifications are just there, just say like, my focus is this until I get this done, then I will check my email. Then I will check my text messages,
Mhm.
whatever it might be. And that's the reward for finishing what you have started. I have a huge tendency to have way too many tabs open, way too many. Like I have like an email that's like almost ready to send and then something else stings me and I look at that and then that email's still pending and I've got this other thing on my desk. Someone comes in to ask for something. I've got that answered. I come back. What was this over here that I was on? Oh yeah, I get that about done. Then I see another email. Oh darn, I still have that email pending that I didn't send. Like I didn't finish one thing until I like moved on to the
Yeah.
next. So it's okay to say, do I need to do this right now? Or can you give me 5 minutes? Usually the answer is, oh yeah, 5 minutes. I'm like, great. Let me just finish this, finish this, finish this. Because in 5 minutes when I'm focused and I'm not having to review, where was I again on that? That time to review to pick back up is like time lost. Whereas I could have just like finished the last sentence and clicked send. There's one sentence left.
Right. Well, I know a lot of people do, and this is one thing this year I am personally going to try to be better at is block timing, where you sit down and it's like from 9 to 10 on Tuesday mornings, I'm going to answer emails.
Yep.
And you just sit and you go through the emails and you answer it, you finish start to finish and you go through.
Yeah.
And just like blocking your time throughout your day as two specific tasks. Now, it's not always 100%. Things are going to happen,
Mhm.
emergencies are going to arise. But for the most part, if you can stick to that and get that one task done, then it's done and it's out of the way. And then you can move on. And not only do you feel a little bit more accomplished, but it's kind of the snowball effect. You get things rolling and the snowball gets bigger and bigger and you're getting more and more done. Whereas if you feel like you're just, and you're not getting
Mhm.
anything done, well, you're most likely not going to be as productive.
You're not, your productivity definitely decreases. So it takes you more time to get less done. And then you're like, then you're
Mhm.
feeling like, well, darn, I felt like I really went in today with this, like all of these things I was going to accomplish. And then I didn't. And then it's like, well, you don't ever take the time to look back to say, well, how could I have done a better job with whatever this was? And so
Mhm.
identifying some of those distractions is how you then implement the action plan. And so, I mean, I'm a classic example of like, I need an action plan. I need like, and block timing works really well for me. Like, I've
Mhm.
got certain things that I'm like, okay, this is allocated. I even block time for exercise. That is like blocked on my schedule. Like, boom, that's what this time is for. After that, I can then do X, Y, or Z. Like, am I available for this meeting? No, I can do it here, not there. And if I have to move a block, I will if I really have to. Otherwise, if it's already there, and especially if it's like for my personal health, like
Right.
it like
Exactly. Yeah.
if it's for my personal health, it needs to be a really good reason to move that block, or to remove it completely to add something in. That's a major sacrifice that's not sustainable. But for a very good reason, obviously I will. But otherwise it's like, no, I'm not available at that time. What else do you have? And
Right. Exactly.
usually they're like, oh, well, what about this? You're like, oh, that works.
Yes.
Instead of
For the
just like
most part,
accommodating to the first option presented. So like
it
it's
reminds
okay.
me,
Mhm.
I was gonna say, it reminds me of a book by, it's a Navy SEAL. He was an admiral, I believe, and it's a very famous speech, but it's called Make Your Bed. And it talks about in the military how important in every morning they have to make their bed, because if nothing else goes right that day, you at least accomplish something. And so it's just that idea of like, just get the one thing done and then you'll feel better and you're moving on. And if that's the only thing you got done, at least you got one thing done that day.
A little bit of something's better than a whole lot of nothing. Right?
That's from our Dr. Chase.
Yeah, one of our grad school professors. And it is the mantra when I start to beat myself up. Like I'm going on a shorter run than I expected. I'm doing half the workout for strengthening because I just don't have the time, or I got started late, or whatever it might be. And I'm like, oh, this isn't what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And it's like a little bit of something's better than a whole lot of nothing. A 30-minute run is great. 45 is better. Okay. I cut out for 30. Perfect.
Right. And it's better than nothing.
Right. Like, I don't undersell that. Like, that's still a check. Like, you're doing it. So, like, yeah. So that's kind of like I think our big picture with goal setting is really trying to take a step back, like challenge yourself this year, starting 2023, of step back and look at big dreams, goals, and all of these different categories that Dr. Bobbie was saying. It was like spiritual, health, finances, adventures, family, relationships outside of family.
Yep.
I think I've got missing 2.
Personal growth, just
Personal
like how you're
growth,
gonna, which
career.
I think is important. Yeah. Which I think is important. Spiritual, I think you said that
spiritual, and then the career goals as well.
Yeah.
Because we never really want to put all of our eggs into just this one basket. I know, like, oftentimes, like the New Year's resolution, I'm going to X, Y, or Z, lose 20 pounds, join a gym, I don't know, get a degree, whatever it might be. I mean,
if you're ever a regular gym goer, you avoid the gym the first week or 2 of January, because like all these people, and then in a few weeks they're just gonna be gone. So
right. Yeah. But I think a more sustainable plan is to actually look at your life from all of these different categories and say, what do I want out of all of these categories? And then consider what do I want to address first? Make some plans for that, and then have this thing that you can refer back to. I mean, you're the one that took the time to write all these out. So then as you start like achieving some goals, review back and say, oh, wow, and maybe by the summer, you're going to be like, oh, goodness, like, I'm actually moving forward with this. And then by the fall, it's like, and then you get into like the new year, the next year, and you challenge yourself to do it all over again. And if you're constantly doing that, there's kind of no way that you're not going to grow in some way. It's just constantly challenging yourself to grow, to achieve more. And that doesn't mean monetary. Achieve more for you. So our motto for this year is putting you first. You've got to learn how to put you first in order to be the strongest person you can for everybody else in your life, whether it's your career, your family, your other friendships, interpersonal relationships. All of that is going to have better success if you are the strongest individual possible. And so that means your bucket needs to be filled in all of these different categories in some way, shape, or form. And it just takes this constant, like this like turning of like constantly putting enough to keep each of these buckets full enough. And sometimes you're going to be stronger in some, and then you're going to balance it back out, and then you're going to be stronger in other ones. And that's just life. But as long as you're constantly trying to keep it all balanced little by little, then the only chance is to grow. That's it. Like, that's the only thing that can happen. Yeah.
I think it's important. I know that, this is being released on January 1st. You don't need to have your goals for 2023 figured out January 1st, which is why we're taking the whole entire month to kind of create those goals. You got 12 months in a year. You got plenty of time to really sit down, and if you make really good goals and you really think about it and you follow your passions, you'll be much more successful. So we really would love for you in the next week to write down, pull out a piece of paper, make it fun. I make mine fun by making it colorful, as you can see. And write down just 50, dream. Don't put limits on it. Even if you're in my head or even if in your head you think it's absolutely crazy, I'll never be able to do that, write it down. You never know what will happen. So write down your 50 goals and then look at it and pick the top 5 that you want to do for this year. Like the top 5 topics, basically, I'd say that you want to focus on. And then go through and write out your rewards if you hit that, and write out your fears and your distractions and how you're going to do that. And then what we're going to do for the next ones is we're going to break them down into monthly and weekly goals, or even daily. And with those different categories to give you ideas on how to create them. So you will be making your goals over this whole month. So do not feel like it's January 1st. I have to have everything figured out.
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't.
Right? I know, me neither. So that's what this next week will be about, is getting that, starting that process for me.
Right. Yeah, just taking that time to reflect.
And I need to do that too. Is reflect on last year and what I didn't hit a lot of these goals as I look back and read them, but that's a-okay.
Oh, I mean, but think of the ones, this is like with our checklist, think about the ones you did hit that you didn't write down.
Right.
Give yourself that yay, pat on the back of I didn't even have this on my list and I achieved it. And that's awesome as well. It's like making the to-do list and then all the stuff that you've already done, you add it just so you can check it off. I mean, you earned those, you already did it. Check them off.
They count.
They do count. Yeah. So all right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening. Make sure, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We have a closed group as well as just our open group on Facebook. So if you have interest in a smaller, tight-knit community, it's 2 Gals in a Glass Half Full group. And then we also have our Insiders membership as well, which is a group where we have a little bit more specificity of some more support going on for a smaller group as well. So, all right, everybody. Well, welcome to 2023.